Nature's most destructive force and often the most feared is the tornado. The meteorological definition of a tornado, according to the National Weather Service, is a violently rotating column of air touching the ground, usually attached to the base of a thunderstorm. Tornadoes can happen any time of the year if the conditions are right, but most often occur between March and June. The U.S. experiences an average of around 1,200 tornadoes per year, with most occurring in the Central Plains and Southeast. As seen in the following old newsreels, they are very destructive. Tornadoes kill an average of 71 people per year now, but prior to the first public tornado warnings, the average was much higher. Over the years, many ways have been developed to receive these vital warnings, and it is highly recommended to have multiple ways to receive them. Here, we present a top 10 list of the worst tornadoes to hit the U.S. Number 10. On June 8, 1953, the community of Beecher, a Flint, Michigan suburb, was hard hit by a large tornado. It was one of 8 tornadoes to touch down in Michigan and Ohio that day, and part of the larger Flint-Worcester outbreak. The tornado touched down near the intersection of Webster and Coldwater Roads in Mount Morris Township. The initial path of the tornado was due east right on down Coldwater Road into Beecher. Beecher had no warning sirens at the time, and tornado warnings weren't issued then like they are today. The Beecher community took a direct hit. Witnesses reported seeing multiple vortices within the tornado, and that the funnel resembled black smoke. Beecher High School was heavily damaged, and the twister passed near the North Flint Drive-In Theater, where there were many people in their cars watching the movie that was playing that evening. People panicked, and while some ended up in accidents in the chaos, some ended up driving right into the path of the funnel. The theater only received minor damage from the storm. The tornado then took a slight turn to the east-northeast, roughly following the Flint River, causing more damage and casualties before dissipating north of Lapeer. Minutes later, another tornado formed where the Beecher one had ended, and that one traveled over mostly rural areas all the way to Lake Huron. In total, there were 116 fatalities, with 113 of them occurring in Beecher alone. Some families reported losing multiple relatives in the storm. 2 families lost 5 members each. Number 9. The New Richmond tornado hit New Richmond, Wisconsin on June 12, 1889. It was raining with hail while people were enjoying the circus. The rain let up and people headed home. At 6 p.m., the streets were full of people. Meanwhile, several miles away, a tornado was forming and heading straight for New Richmond. It had hit several farms along the way. Few were aware of the tornado until it was too late. It came into the southwestern corner of town, plowed through downtown, and went on to hit a few more farms before laying the community of Ireland to the ground. In New Richmond, more than 300 buildings were destroyed. An iron frame building over the Willow River was destroyed, wadded up on the riverbank. The only remnant of the town's Methodist church was the 1.1-ton cast iron bell that was found 200 feet from the church's foundation. The extreme northwestern and southeastern corners of town were narrowly spared. In all, 117 people were killed and 125 were injured. Number 8. The Amet, Louisiana, Purvis, Mississippi tornado occurred on April 24, 1908. It was the second of a pair of long-track tornadoes and part of the 1908 Dixie outbreak. The path length was 155 miles, and the width was at time over 2 miles. The towns of Amet, Louisiana, and Purvis, Mississippi took the brunt of the damage and fatalities, although the towns of Wilmer and Pine were hard hit as well. Railroad crew workers near McAllen, Mississippi, took refuge in a boxcar. The tornado threw that boxcar and several others 150 feet and destroyed them. There were 143 deaths and at least 770 were injured, although the number of injuries may have been higher. Number 7. The Joplin tornado was a large multi-vortex tornado that decimated parts of Joplin, Missouri on May 22, 2011. It reached nearly a mile wide as it traveled through the southern parts of the city. The tornado removed manhole covers, parking stops, and scoured pavement, as well as destroying a major hospital. It also destroyed a Walmart supercenter, a Home Depot, a Pepsi distribution plant, and numerous other businesses. Nearly 7,000 homes destroyed and hundreds were damaged. Tractor trailers were thrown up to 200 yards away. A chair was found impaled legs first into the wall of an Academy sports store. It was ranked as the costliest single tornado in the U.S. and the deadliest U.S. tornado since 1947. It was also the first single tornado since 1953 to have 100 or more associated fatalities. This slide shows 2 satellite images, one taken in September of 2010 and the other just 2 weeks after the tornado. You can see that the tornado left quite a scar across the city. Number 6. On April 9, 1947, the Glazier-Higgins-Woodward tornado blasted through Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. This tornado was actually a tornado family of 8 or 9 tornadoes, of which was one that traveled for 125 miles and is believed to be responsible for most of the damage and fatalities. Several small towns were heavily damaged and almost blown off the map. In Higgins, Texas, the tornado ripped a 4.5-ton lathe from its anchors and broke it in half. By the time the tornado reached Woodward, Oklahoma, it was reportedly 2 miles wide. It leveled 100 city blocks, and when the twister hit the city's power plant, it had lifted a 20-ton boiler about a block and a half away. To this day, it is still the worst tornado to hit the state of Oklahoma. Number 5. The Gainesville tornado initially began as 2 tornadoes, but converged to become one multi-vortex tornado that leveled the downtown area of Gainesville. It was the cause of the highest tornado-caused death toll in a single building in U.S. history, when 70 workers were killed at the Cooper Pant Factory. It is the second of the 2 tornadoes that made this list occurring from the same outbreak. There were 750 homes destroyed and 254 badly damaged. The death toll was a minimum of 203, although at the time the number was posted, there were still 40 missing. Some were lost when buildings collapsed and subsequently caught fire. Interesting fact, letters from Gainesville were blown 70 miles away to Andersonville, South Carolina. Number 4. The Tupelo tornado occurred in the early morning hours of April 6, 1936, as part of the same outbreak that produced the Gainesville tornado. This tornado was also the second twister of a tornado family, which are multiple tornadoes formed from the same cell. At least 216 deaths and over 700 injuries resulted from this storm. The tornado completely leveled 48 city blocks, with the Gum Pond area taking the worst hit. Several people who died were thrown into the pond by the storm, and many of the bodies were never recovered. The tornado stayed on the ground for 15 miles. An interesting side note, Tupla's most famous resident was barely a year old at the time of the tornado, and his family's home escaped relatively unscathed. That resident was Elvis Presley. Number 3. The St. Louis tornado occurred on May 27, 1896 as part of one of the worst tornado outbreak sequences in U.S. history. In fact, it has been said that the week of May 15 to 28, 1896 was perhaps the most violent single week of tornado activity in United States history, according to tornado expert Tom Grazilius. This storm resulted in at least 255 fatalities and over 1,000 injuries. The number of fatalities may have been higher due to a number of boats in the Mississippi River at the time, where some bodies are believed to have been swept downstream and never found. The twister crossed the river into East St. Louis, Illinois. As it crossed, it struck a bridge, where a 2-inch by 10-inch wooden plank was found driven through a 5/16-inch wrought iron plate. A barometer in the area recorded a pressure drop to 26.74 inches, which, if confirmed and official, it would have been the lowest non-coastal storm-related barometric pressure recorded. Number 2. The Natchez tornado formed southwest of town and was reported to have followed the Mississippi River. The death toll was at least 317 people, most of whom were on boats at the river port of Natchez Landing. At least 109 people were injured. Actual numbers may be higher, as slave deaths and injuries were not counted during that time period. The tornado was reported to be a mile wide. Damage was reported on both sides of the river, including the town of Vidalia, Louisiana, where one of the deaths occurred. It was also reported that a piece of a steamboat was found 30 miles away from the river. Last, and certainly not least, number 1. The Tri-State tornado occurred on March 18, 1925. So named because its 219-mile path traversed 3 states. It formed in Shannon County, Missouri, and dissipated in Pike County, Indiana, staying on the ground for just over 3.5 hours. On at least one occasion, it was reported that there were 2 tornadoes on the ground simultaneously. This tornado holds records for the longest path, most deaths in a single tornado at 695, and most injuries in a single tornado, which was 2,027.